I hope you have your ears open for this one. One of my all-time favorite conversations I've ever had with another human. Joe is genuine, honest, relatable, so inspiring and wisdom-filled. I'm so excited for you to listen to this episode. And if there was anything specific that you hear, that you take away, and it's just kind of an aha moment, it was impactful, write the quote down, write down what he said, share it with me, share it with Joe, put it on your social media, take a screenshot of the show, and make sure to tag Joe and myself, which those will both be in the show notes. I'm not even going to say anything else because I just want us to jump into it and for you to start listening to everything we talked about. Taking notes on this episode is highly encouraged. All right, let's get into it. I will see you on the other side. Welcome to Flow with the Grow. I'm your host, Sophia, a health and fitness professional, positivity distributor, and a real-life human being with real-life challenges. Every Tuesday, you'll hear my honest conversations on the day-to-day highs and lows that life teaches us, as well as bring you actionable tips that you can implement to improve your health and wellness journey. This podcast will empower you to flow with the inevitable setbacks of life. You will learn what it means to flow with the grow, see through a lens of optimism, and navigate your way to living your best life. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Now let's jump into your daily dose of positivity and growth. I'm gonna start recording this. Cool. So what are you doing where is home for you?
My wife and I live in Philadelphia. Home is New Jersey. So it's about like an hour and a half. And just seeing my parents. My sister graduated college and I need to get my car inspected. So the stars aligned and I was
Nice. Cool. Well, I'm super excited to talk with you today. I know that just after looking over your website, your blog, and your social media, I'm just like, wow, this is a guy I need to connect with.
Aw.
So
Thanks. I'm so excited.
Have you ever been on a other podcast before? Is this your first?
Yeah, I probably like a couple dozen. So I
Wow.
Yeah, and I actually co-host a podcast as well. So
I saw that.
Yeah, so I know how it works, but I'll let you take the lead, and
Very cool.
yeah,
Okay.
I can talk about anything, so there's nothing off limits.
Okay, awesome. So first, I would love if you just kind of told us more about you and your background a little bit to where you are now.
Sure. So I guess as just a general introduction, I'm Joe Rinaldi. I'm 27 years old, and I'm a physical therapist and performance coach based out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I think the biggest defining thing in my life is really my biggest struggle, and that's what I like to lead off with. And so I have a genetic condition called Best disease. And for those of you who don't know what Best disease is, it's juvenile onset macular degeneration. And for those of you who don't know what that is, basically I'm losing my central sight, and it's happened from a young age, and there's not much I can do about it. And so that has ebbed and flowed throughout my life. So from 10 years old to now 27, I've struggled through that. And I've gone through various phases in life where at certain points it's been a really heavy burden. And at other points, specifically the past couple of years, it's just been an absolute blessing. And I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense to most people, but I'd be happy to talk more about it. And that's like most about me, honestly, is that condition.
So when you first found out, can you tell me kind of like what your thoughts were? Was it kind of defeating? Was it like, this is a strength right away? Like what happened?
Yeah. So I had no idea I had this. We didn't even know it ran in my family. So I woke up one day when I was 10 years old to go to school, like opened my eyes, and I realized something was off. And so like to try to figure it out, I closed my right eye and everything was fine when I was looking through my left eye, and like still in bed. This is like, I'm looking at the ceiling, and I closed my left eye and I couldn't see anything. And so I went downstairs and told my parents, kind of in a panic. And at first, I don't know they fully believed me or understood. And then they figured out it was like really, I was telling the truth. And we went to New York City and saw all these specialists, and we spent the whole day. And at the end of the day, at like 9 o'clock at night, sitting in a doctor's office, they told me that I had Best disease, and they explained what it was. They explained that it was inherited and that there wasn't a cure for it, but there are treatments. So what'll happen is I'll have an episode, and I'll call it an episode. I'll lose some of my sight, and usually that's due to fluid or blood accumulating behind my retina, and that blood acts as an irritant to those cells, and so those cells start to die and lose their function, and I lose sight. And so in the past, I've gotten laser procedures. Now they use injections, so they actually inject a drug right into my eye. But at that time, 10 years old, I didn't know what to think. Honestly, it just hit me out of nowhere. And throughout my childhood, I really, I think I pitied myself. I felt really sorry for myself. I lacked a lot of self-confidence. And I think I just in general felt like nobody could understand me, because from the outside, it looked like I was totally normal. But on the inside, I felt very disadvantaged, and I felt like life wasn't fair. And I let that kind of hold me back in a lot of areas. And so it wasn't until probably a few years ago that all flipped on its head. And I can tell you more about that if you want, but that's kind of like the leading up part where Best disease was a burden.
Yeah. So then was there a turning point, like a specific turning point where it was like, whether it was an experience or a situation, and then that kind of flipped the switch to change your thinking behind it?
Yeah. So I studied exercise science in undergraduate, and I knew I wanted to be a physical therapist. And so, I applied to schools, did everything you need to do, and I got accepted to a few programs and decided I was going to go to Drexel University in Philadelphia to pursue my doctorate degree in physical therapy. And so everything was good. I hadn't had any flare-ups with my eyes in the past couple of years. And so it was kind of like in the back of my mind, like on the back burner. And so just 2 weeks before the program started and I was going to move to Philadelphia away from my family and pursue this big goal, I lost a lot of my sight, and it came at kind of like the worst time possible. And I struggled with a lot of uncertainty, a lot of doubt. And those 2 weeks leading up to school were probably like two of the most hopeless, uncertain, and anxious weeks of my life. And I was really grateful that my parents were able to kind of talk me into going to school, and helping me understand that I needed to trust myself and trust in my abilities to figure things out if they were to happen down the road, because I was so worried about, what if I go blind? What if I can't finish school? What if? And they told me that I needed to stop thinking in terms of what if and start thinking in terms of even if. So instead of what if I go blind and can't finish school, it was even if I go blind, I will find a way to finish things and to figure things out. So anyway, fast forward, I go to school. That first year of graduate school is probably the toughest year of my life collectively. I just, I felt really alone. I was adjusting to a new city. On the outside, it probably looked like I had it all together. I was doing great in school, making friends, but on the inside, I felt really alone. And I felt like I was in this dark place I had never been before. And I was really used to, throughout the rest of my life, trying really hard at things and putting more effort, and those things would get better, whether it was academics or athletics. But no matter how hard I tried for that first year of school, I just couldn't pull myself out of it. And that was a really terrible feeling. And so at the end of that first year, I started spending more time with this girl who I had a crush on. And as I spent more time with her, I started feeling better. And little by little, I started thinking less about myself and more about her. And I started feeling normal again. And I was enjoying life. And I realized now that girl is now my wife. And I realize now that everything in my life leading up to that point was happening on purpose, for a purpose. It was happening for a reason. And it was that transition period where I met my wife, where I realized that some of the darkest times in my life led me to the best thing in my life. And so after that, I just can't help but feel and know, like deep down inside, that my eyesight is truly a strength and it's a blessing. And I have a new perspective on life because of that.
That's so amazing. And I think it's cool because we can experience things, whether it's negative or positive, and like the worst thing that can happen to us, and we don't realize the impact that it actually is doing for us until years later, and we connect the dots and we're like, okay, this happened because of this. Like this happened for a reason. And now I'm here. And then it's like it flips a switch and their perspective has changed.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So do you think that this is the hardest challenge you've had to overcome, or has there been anything else?
I mean, yeah, there have been struggles. I mean, a lot of my personal battles have been related to my eyes. And so, I had to stop playing baseball at a young age, and that was a sport that I really loved. And, it was a way that my dad and I had bonded growing up, and that ended because of my eyesight. I played a little bit of football in college, and I loved the competitive nature of the sport. And, I love the sport in general, but I had to stop again because every time I was getting hit, my eyesight was getting distorted. And so a lot of those struggles were related to my sight. But I would say, like, by far the biggest struggle in my life has just been navigating this condition and trying every day to kind of fine tune my perspective on life. Because I think it was Henry David Thoreau said, it's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. And every single day I try to see and find the good in things, the good in people, and just the good in my circumstances, even if they don't feel so good at the time.
That's so inspiring. So how has that perspective influenced or impacted other areas of your life?
Yeah, I think for me, I realized through this, battle with Best disease, I guess you can call it, that on the outside, throughout my entire life, to everybody around me, except maybe the few closest people to me and my family, everybody else probably thinks that I have it all together, that my life is all great, like all sunshine and rainbows, like that every day is a good day. But I've gone through some serious periods where I've felt dark. I don't even know how else to describe it. And that's made me realize that everybody's going through something. Like no matter what somebody looks like on the outside, every single person is struggling with something. And I think that perspective has just changed every relationship and every interaction that I have. And there's this story that I remember going to an assembly in middle school and hearing this speaker tell a story. And I know it's a true story. I don't know the details. And I'm sure in translation, it's gotten changed bits and pieces here and there. But, the story goes essentially something like this. And before I say it, I don't know if anybody has any triggers out there. But if you do and you don't want to listen to this story, I would skip ahead maybe a minute or two. But there was once this man who lived in California and ended up committing suicide by jumping off of the Golden Gate Bridge. And when the police did the investigation, they found a note on his nightstand table. And the note read something to the effect of, I'm alone in this world. Nobody cares about me. So tomorrow morning, I'm going to walk 1 mile at rush hour to the Golden Gate Bridge and take my life. If one person smiles at me, I won't do it. And I get the chills every time I tell that story or hear that story. And basically for me, like, my life is just spent, like, every single person I pass, I just feel called. And, I feel called to make their life just a little bit better, whether it's a smile, holding a door, doing something, a kind gesture, or just being there for people. You never know what someone else is going through. And life is so much bigger than just us. So really everything that I do is focused on that. And just letting other people know that they're not alone, through my actions, through my words, and just through everything that I do.
Yeah, I'm so glad you shared that story. That's wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It makes you think about things differently too, like in your day. Wow. So is there anything that you do when you're in kind of that dark place? Because I'm sure it still happens. Is there anything that you do specifically to help you get yourself out of that dark place?
It's a really good question. And I've been really fortunate over the past couple of years not to enter that space too often. But I think for me, it just all comes down to trust and faith and belief that things will get better. And as a child, my mom, anytime I was upset or anxious, she'd always say, this too shall pass. And it's been so true in my life. Anytime I've hit a rough patch, anytime I've hit a dark season, it always passes. And for me, it's just all about putting one foot in front of the other and just doing the next right thing over and over and over again. And so I feel like I've spent a lot of my life building up these habits, and I try to stick to those habits. So what I mean is I wake up early every morning. I take cold showers, I do hard things, and I do them on purpose because I know someday in life I'm going to hit a hard season, and I want to have that kind of like mental muscle and that mental habit to fall back on. So I think a lot of what I do on the dark days or the hard days now is actually a result of what I do every single day leading up to that. And just falling back on those habits and that muscle that I've built over and over again.
That is a solid piece of advice right there. Like, whoever's listening needs to rewind, listen, take notes. That is, yeah. I've never thought
Yeah.
about it like that before.
I mean, it's just like, yeah, you go to the gym and you lift weights, and eventually if you lift weights long enough and consistently enough, you can lift heavier weights, and then you can continue to do that. But if you stop and then all of a sudden you go back to the gym, you have to start at a much lower weight or a much lower resistance or intensity. But in life, if you can just be consistent with doing things that push you a little bit further out of your comfort zone, you expand that comfort zone, and you can build that mental muscle, the willpower, the discipline, the ability to do hard things. Like, that's a muscle that you can train, and you just have to be consistent and intentional with it. And so, yeah, that's definitely been something that has been a huge part of my life over the past few years.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely remember that moving forward for myself too. That's so good. Do you so you're the eye condition that you have, does it come and go where it's worse days than other days? Is it getting worse as you're getting older now? Can you tell us
Yeah,
more about that?
that's a really good question. So I guess, like, to put it in perspective for people, what happens with my condition is that I lose my central sight, and it happens in bits and pieces. So for example, when I was 10 years old, and if you're familiar with how your eyes are judged in your vision, I don't like to use the word vision. I like to use the word sight, because for me, I think sight and vision are two very different things. And I like to say, what I've lost in sight, I've gained in vision. So I could talk about that more later. But essentially, my right eye was like 2,400, meaning like at 20 feet away from something, I could see what someone else could see from 400 feet away. Like, that's how bad it was in my right eye. And so I had a laser treatment, and things got better. My body absorbed the blood and the fluid that was causing my vision to be distorted, but there was scarring that was left behind. And so maybe my right eye went from 2,400 and it came back down to like 2040, right? And then the next time I had an episode, my right eye went back up to like 2,400, and I had a procedure or a surgery, and it came back down to like 2060, and so on and so forth. So what happens is, every now and then, it might be a matter of months in between episodes or a matter of years, I'll have an episode, I'll get a treatment, and my vision gets worse. It gets a little bit better with the treatment, but it stays worse than it was before. So it's kind of this game where I have to be on top of it. If I notice a change in my sight, I have to go get a treatment. And it's progressive. So my sight, sorry, I caught myself there. My sight in my right eye will never be better than what it is right now. So it just has the potential to get worse. My left eye, thankfully, is pretty good. So with both eyes open, I can drive, I can read, I can write. The hardest things for me are like catching small objects like a baseball and recognizing people's faces, because I don't have that center part of my sight.
Okay. And so is there potential for you to go completely blind then?
Yeah. And yes, the answer is yes. I don't think it's what most people think of when they think completely blind. Blind, I think most people think of as complete darkness and black, but technically and legally blind is below a certain threshold of sight. And so what would happen eventually is that I wouldn't have my central vision. So if you were to look at just straight ahead, about 80%, let's say, for example, of my sight right in the middle would be gone. And I would just be able to see kind of the things way off far to the sides. But anytime, this is what's challenging, is if I am looking at stars, for example, on a great night, clear sky, look up at the stars, I can't really see the stars, because every time I look at a star, I lose it in my black spot in the middle of my sight. And then I can see all the stars in my peripheral vision. And then I'll go to look at a different one, and then that one disappears. And I'll go to look at a different one. So, yeah. Potentially toward blindness, but it might not look like complete blackness.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've actually had that happen to me where like I'm looking at stars or something at
Huh,
nighttime and I don't see what I'm seeing in front of me. I see more so the peripheral vision.
interesting.
So I thought everyone experienced that. So
Well, maybe I'm not alone then.
yeah, that's one thing where I've noticed like all growing up is that I'll be looking at something if it's nighttime, dark out, can't see like I can see more clear if it's off to the side a little bit.
Interesting. Huh. Maybe I'm not alone then. Who
Yeah.
knows?
I don't know. Maybe I need to ask more people if that happens to them. Are you afraid of anything? Like, is there anything you're like fearful of at all, or have been maybe in the past with like with all of this?
I have two things I'm afraid of right now, and neither of them are related to my eyes. In the past, yeah, I think I was very afraid of losing my sight and losing my independence. Um, it still is unsettling to think that I might not be able to drive, at some point in the near future, potentially. I'm 27. I might be 28 next year and not be able to have a license. And that is unsettling, but I know I'll figure it out and it's not the end of the world. The two things that scare me, one, not reaching my full potential, or at least not getting close to it. And two, being so focused on making a big impact for a lot of people that I am not there for the few people who are closest to me. And I know that sounds crazy. Like I'm almost afraid of doing too much for too many people because I can see myself going in that direction. That's a tendency I have, is to just go, 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 want to do big things for a lot of people. And what I'm scared of is that would leave me not enough time and attention and energy to spend with, my wife and hopefully my future children and the people closest to me. So yeah, it's about potential for me. And then also being there for the people that are closest to me, regardless of everything else I'm doing.
Yeah, I think those are more on the positive end of fearing things. I think that's yeah.
And I'm afraid of heights.
So like roller coasters, you don't like going on
Oh
roller
man, I don't
coasters?
understand roller coasters. I mean, I get it. I get it. But like if I'm on a roller coaster, I'm the person who, first of all, if I'm on a roller coaster, it means I really like the person who I'm sitting next to. And I'm not like, I'm the person who's like sunken down in the seat, like holding their breath, not screaming, just like waiting for the ride to be over. Yeah. Do you like roller coasters?
Yes, I love them. Love them. I remember though one time when I was younger, I did not love them. I don't know what changed for me, but I remember going on a roller coaster and I actually made them not start it because I got off. I was like, nope, not for me. But then I don't know, somewhere along the line, I just came to really love them.
Huh.
And
Well, let
yeah.
me ask you this question. If
Okay.
you're like at the edge of a cliff, right? Like say you go to the Grand Canyon, are you the person who like go up to the edge and like take a selfie like right at the edge of the Grand Canyon?
100%. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that makes my stomach drop. Like I'm the person who's like 15 feet back and will get on my tippy toes and like look from there. Like no question.
I mean, I'll like be super careful. I'm not one of the ones that will be crazy doing like a yoga pose on the very end of
Uh-huh.
it, but I definitely inch my way very close. And my grandma doesn't like it. My mom doesn't like it, but I definitely do it. I think it's yeah, I love it. That's
Yeah.
hilarious. Um, what was I? Oh yeah. So do you have a specific like? Let's talk more about your vision for your potential.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot about pursuing things. The podcast that I co-host is called the Pursuit Podcast, and we talk a lot about what people are pursuing. And so for me, at the end of the day, I think I'll end up having a lot of titles. Hopefully, I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I'm a husband. I'm going to soon be an author. I have a lot of things that I do and a lot of labels that get placed on them. But above all of those, and actually beneath all of those, I'm just a person. I'm Joe Rinaldi, like the human being. And it sounds vague, but my ultimate goal in life to reach my full potential would be to be the best human being that I can possibly be. And so that would look like being the best husband, the best father, the best friend, just the best person that I could be. And so that's really what I'm pursuing. And to get there potential wise, I feel like I need to test myself and train my mind and even train my body in very specific and intentional ways. And that's one of the things I love about struggle. I feel like I have this gift of constant struggle. And I say that's a gift because I truly believe that only through struggle can you find strength. And so every day I'm battling with something different related to my eyes. And I wake up and there's uncertainty as to whether or not I'm going to be able to see like I was able to see the day before. And so it's allowed me to develop this attitude of gratitude and this perspective where I can look at things no matter how hard or how dark they might look and find an opportunity or see a positive. And I feel like I want to develop that muscle to the point where I can be 90 years old and anybody around me can be going through something hard. And I can say, I've been through that. I know what you're feeling. And it's going to get better. And I can say those things in a way that people truly believe it about me, but about themselves as well. So I just want to be that person that is like kind of what I can give anybody what they want. And I know that sounds like really hard and vague, but I just want to be able to be there for people in like the best way.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can totally relate to that. I'm kind of the same way. And I think for me, like it's awesome to see someone else who seems very multi-passionate in different ways, but then also just wanting to be a good human in the best way possible with different people you meet and strangers, and then also showing that there is strength in struggle.
Yeah.
And what about, have you ever met someone, or I guess what would you say to the person who is not in a place where they are viewing strength in struggle?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think like the first thing I would say to somebody who's feeling like they're in a dark place or is feeling alone or struggling with something is you're not alone. And I know it can feel really isolating to battle something, especially something that you're still trying to process and maybe something that you don't feel comfortable talking about with a lot of people. But whatever it is you're facing, you're not alone. And there are people who care about you. And I like to say on these podcasts that, I'm one of them. And even if we've never met, I promise you, reach out to me and I will be there for you. And I'd love to connect with you and talk with you. So like, that's the first thing. You're not alone. Second thing is it's totally okay to ask for help and to reach out for support. And it's more than okay. I would say that's normal. And that actually is really courageous and shows a lot of strength. And so you're not alone. Reach out for support/help. And then the other thing I would say is like, you have to look back at your life and look at all of the hard times, look at all of the tough days, look at all of the unfortunate circumstances, and then look at where you are today and connect those dots and look at your path. Because more often than not, I'd say like 100 times out of 100, some of the hardest moments in your life have led to some of the best things. And maybe you haven't pieced those puzzle pieces together yet, but it's absolutely true for me. I know for so many other people, and I believe it's true for you too, whoever it is that's listening to this. And so I love quotes, and my favorite quote ever, something I'm actually planning my first tattoo around, is a quote by Christine Kane. And she said, "Sometimes when you're in a dark place, it feels like you've been buried, but you've actually been planted." And to me, that just like, it sums it all up. Like you could be in the darkest place and it feels like the weight of the world is on top of you and you've just been suffocated and buried, but actually you've been planted and you just have to hold on until you break through the surface.
Oh, wow. I love that. I don't think I've ever heard that quote, but I totally agree. That's so great. Wow. What was I going to ask? I'm so lost in that
No,
quote
it's
now.
all good. And I will say this, like it's so much easier to sit on this end of things in, not in that dark place currently and on a podcast talking about it, giving advice. It's so easy to say it. It's really hard to live it out. It's really hard. And sometimes like being brave or being courageous doesn't look like this big, like grand gesture or act or whatever. Sometimes it's literally just getting out of bed and putting one foot in front of the other. Like sometimes it's just giving your best effort and making it through another day. Like that's brave and that's courageous. And so when you're in the struggle, it might not feel like it's this gift. But when you make it to the other side, you'll realize that it was. And then that's when you can use that experience to help other people. And that's like another gift of struggle, is that it helps you gain experience and even credibility so that you can help other people get through the same thing. And it all circles back to that idea that life is so much bigger than us. And so I would say, even if you're feeling alone in a struggle, know that that struggle can be used to help other people. And maybe that's one of the reasons you're dealing with it.
Yeah, and that's actually what I was going to bring up too, was that like for me, I I think about it as whatever struggle I am in or have been in or will go through, I can use that as something that I can teach others.
Yeah.
And I can share about it, whether it's social media or if someone just comes up to me and comes up in conversation. Like, it feels so good to be able to help someone through a
Yeah.
struggle that I've been through. And
Yeah.
that's a strength. And it just feels so good to do that, because you're just helping other people. When we help other people, we feel good, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And the other thing too is like, stick with me here for a second, because this is just forming in my head. But imagine that you're a new parent, right? And you have like a 4-week-old baby, and you are just sleep deprived, and you have no idea what to do, and you feel like you're never going to make it through. Would you rather have me, someone who's not a parent, come up to you and put my hand on your shoulder and say, listen, it's going to be okay. I've never been through this, but I know how you're feeling and it's going to be fine? Or would you rather have like, a parent of 5 children who are all grown up now come up to you and say, put their hand on your shoulder and say, listen, I've been through this. I know how you feel. It's going to be okay. I promise. You'd pick the person who's also a parent. And so just like that scenario makes sense. When you go through struggle, you're better able to help other people who go through struggles, even if they're not the same thing. Because, at our core as people, we all feel the same emotions. We all deal with the same internal battles. They might look a lot different on the outside, but on the inside, they're often more similar than not.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. Let's go back to the quote where you talked about the difference between vision and sight, like how you don't like to, talk to us more about that.
Yeah, well, I think, it's a really nuanced distinction, because technically vision and sight are basically the same thing for all intents and purposes. But for me, sight is what you see, and vision is more how you interpret that and how you see, how you put things in context and perspective. So for me, sight is the physical ability to see something. So yeah, my sight is not good, but for me, my vision is the perspective that I take on everything and the forward facing vision that I have for my life and where I see things going. And so what I've lost in sight, like as I've struggled with this sight loss, I've gained perspective and I've gained the ability to look into the future and understand who it is I want to be, like we've talked about, and how I'm going to get there. And so I see it as a gift. Like my loss of sight is such a gift because it's given me that vision. And I almost like feel sorry for anybody who has never struggled with anything, which probably isn't possible. If you're a human being and you're old enough to listen to a podcast, you've probably like dealt with a struggle, but that would be a sad life to go through life without any struggle, because you wouldn't have any resilience,
That's so true. And it kind of gives us purpose too. I feel like maybe not the moment of us struggling, but after the fact, like what we've already talked about, it kind of gives us that sense of purpose and fulfillment a little bit. Once we realize this perspective, like it is a strength, and we can help other people, and we can connect the dots in the past.
Definitely. Yeah. And I would also say, if everything you always do is just for yourself, at some point you're going to run up against something that's so challenging or so hard or so tough that you're just not going to have that driving force. But if you do things for a purpose or a reason that's bigger than just you, you'll always have that to draw on when things are really, really hard. Because at the end of the day, like I think meaning and fulfillment come from doing things that involve other people and involve causes and purposes bigger than just us. And so if you have that, you can use that as kind of a way to bounce back from tough situations, or even hold on and make it through difficult seasons.
Yeah, totally agree. There was another quote that I saw on your website, and I have it like right here. I'm gonna see. Yeah, so you said in the video on your website, you said struggle is the stimulus for strength and adversity is the opportunity for growth. I just thought that was pretty impactful. And Yeah, that was great. So what does that, maybe we've already kind of touched on it, but what does that mean to you? And how did you come to this mindset of believing this, which maybe just everything we've talked about, but
Yeah, no. Yeah, basically everything we talked about, but I would also say that for me, it means that you have a choice. You have a choice. We all have a choice. Every single time that something happens to us that we can't control, which is most things, right? Like life, we just can't control life. We only get to control how we respond. And our power and our strength is in that response. And so, whether it's struggle or adversity or something else that's really difficult, right? We can't always control that, but we can always control how we respond. And that's where perspective comes in. And that's where forward facing vision comes in. And so when you're faced with a struggle, you get to choose strength if that's what you want. And if you're faced with adversity, you get to look for an opportunity if that's what you want. But you have to want that and you have to understand that you're looking for those things. And so for me, on a personal level, and this is a little bit of a side note, but it kind of ties in. I just last week gave my 4 weeks notice at my job at the clinic I work at, and I'm leaving. And I'm not working at another clinic. I'm kind of taking a little bit of a jump that I've been thinking about for a while. And one of my good friends and actually clients made this analogy for me that just clicked and it made so much sense. And she said, you're hanging onto a rope and you see another rope that you want to get to. And you don't know exactly how to get there, but you know that you can't reach and hold on to both ropes at the same time. And so at some point, you're going to have to let go of the first rope as you kind of reach for the other rope. And it's that middle space where there's a lot of uncertainty and it's uncomfortable and maybe some adversity. You have to enter that space if you ever want to grab onto that other rope. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm leaving my job to kind of create a life that's more centered around being flexible with my time, being able to spend more time with the people closest to me, and really create the impact that I want to create on my own terms, not in the bounds and the confines of a system that doesn't allow me to fully reach my potential. So yeah, I'm taking that jump and I'm using this adversity and this season of life where it's a little bit uncomfortable and uncertain as an opportunity to explore new things, learn more about myself, and just create and forge a path forward that I'm proud of.
that is awesome. Well, first off, congrats, because I
Thank you.
think that's so inspiring. I know so many people who, and maybe you loved your job before and that's awesome, but I know some people, they see kind of another vision for themselves, or they feel like they're maybe held back at their job. And I'm maybe one of just a little bit, but it's like they feel like held back at their job from getting to where they truly want to be and truly want to do. And they're scared to take that jump. That's such a good analogy. And I love it. I can really picture it. But yeah, I feel like some people are just scared to take that jump. So I think for you to do that is
Yeah.
really inspiring. It's awesome. Were you
Thank
scared
you.
to do it?
What'd you say?
Were you scared to do it at all? Or was it like,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, basically over the past, I'd say 2 years, it's like you climb up this diving board, like a really high diving board. And I'm afraid of heights. So this is
yeah,
big. And like you're standing at the edge because you told yourself you were going to jump and you're just like standing there hesitating for 2 years. And it took enough people that believe in me and support me to get behind me. And proverbially, they all pushed me over the edge, but it was their support and encouragement that helped me jump. And yeah, I'm super excited. There's a lot of uncertainty, but at the end of the day, I think some of the best things in life come when we're the most uncomfortable. And I'm really excited for that uncomfortable season that's coming up in 4 weeks for me.
I agree 100%. That's awesome. I'm
Yeah.
curious to know, do you have like people who are driven? They always have, I find, a morning routine or a nighttime routine, maybe both. What do you have anything specific? I know I did look at your Instagram and I think I saw that you woke up at 2:30 a.m. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a problem. I like, first of all, I go to bed, to preface this, I go to bed at like 8 o'clock at night. Like it's not uncommon for me to be like in bed at 7 o'clock at night, like just getting ready to fall asleep. So Yeah, I wake up usually between 2:30 is definitely on the extreme end. It'll happen every once in a while, but between 2:30 and like 4:30 or 5. Most times I'm waking up at 4. Part of that is just out of necessity. I just don't have enough time, it feels like, to do all the things I want to do. And so that's one reason. The other reason is waking up at 4 a.m. is like never gets like a lot easier, you know? Even if you do it all the time, there are still those mornings where you wake up and you just want to hit the snooze, where you just want to go back to bed. But I view the wake up as like a promise that I made to myself the night before. And if I start the day by keeping that promise, it sets this momentum off for the rest of the morning, the rest of the day. So I wake up early. First thing I do is actually make some coffee because I'm addicted, and that's a staple for me, right? So while the coffee's brewing, I'll drink some water. I have a few vitamins I take, so do that stuff. And then after that's all done, I'll sit down, I'll read a little bit. I'll spend a little bit of time praying. That's important to me. I know not everybody does that. And after I have that quiet time, I'll journal a little bit and kind of write down my thoughts, how I'm feeling this morning, anything from the day before that's still on my mind, and then kind of where I want to take this day. I really try to include in my journaling what energy I want to bring to the world and the person that I want to be. And so just kind of setting the tone for what I'm going to bring to the world that day. Once I have that done, I'll usually start responding to text messages, DMs, emails, those kind of things. And then depending on my work schedule, if I have some time, I'll do my workout in the morning and do some creative projects, film a YouTube video, record a podcast, whatever it is, and then I'll work. And at the end of the day, before I go to bed, my 2 nighttime routines are, one, at least spending a few minutes of my time just with my wife, hearing about her day, talking about mine. And I know that sounds like, kind of like a given, but there are some nights where like I'm home at 9 o'clock completely exhausted and all I want to do is just go to bed. And it takes that energy and intention to really spend present time together. So I do that, and I'll write down anything that's still on my mind. And so for me, I have a lot of ideas bouncing around, a lot of things on my to-do list always. And so before I get in bed, I'll write all of those things down on a piece of paper. And it just lets me like clear my mind, because I know when I wake up in the morning, those things will be there. I won't forget about them. I won't lose any of them. They'll be there. So yeah, that's kind of my morning and nighttime routine. And I'm a creature of habit. So without routine and structure, I begin to crumble just a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Have you always woken up that early and had this routine for a long time now? Or is this like newer?
I've always woken up early. I remember as a child waking up at like 5 o'clock in the morning on Saturdays to watch Pokemon. And I was at that age where I was like, I don't know, 6, and I'd bug my parents, like, can I watch TV? Watch TV. And like my parents are still sleeping. It's like 5 in the morning. So of course they were like kind of annoyed, and they'd be like, yeah, go watch TV. So yeah, I always woke up early, but really the 4 o'clock and earlier started in the past, I'd say like 3 years, when my schedule just started getting so jam packed that I needed that quiet time in the morning to get set up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you recommend any books, like any books that have been just at the top of your list?
Yeah, I've got so many books. So I have a problem. I'm addicted to coffee and I'm addicted to books. So right now I'm currently reading Think Again by Adam Grant, which is a really good book, really thought provoking, a lot about just how we think about the world, and how to think differently about things. So that's a great one. Being Wrong by Catherine Schultz is a great book about exactly the title, Being Wrong. And I think too often we go through life trying to justify why we're right. We're trying to avoid being wrong. But at the end of the day, being wrong brings us closer to the truth, and it allows us to learn more and grow more. So that is an excellent book. And then if I had to just pick maybe one other, I would say Mindset by Carol Dweck is a great book. It's all about adopting a growth mindset. And it's about, finding opportunities in adversity and seeing failure and struggle as a way to grow and get better. And so that's a good one for anybody listening.
Very cool. Those are all 3 books. All of those I've never heard of before, actually.
Oh,
so
cool.
That's perfect for me. Yeah. I'm all about growth and mindset. And I'm more so like I like listening to Audible. I like audio best. Yeah, because I just find that I don't make the time currently in my life to read, but I do love to read. I just currently it's more convenient for me, I guess, to do Audible.
Yeah.
How many books do you read in a year, would you say? Is there like a goal or you're just trying to go for it?
I don't currently have a goal, and now that my schedule is going to be changing a little bit in the next month, I probably will set a goal. I probably read 24, 24 to 36 books a year. So like 2 to 3 a month. It just depends on the month and the time of year. Yeah.
How many pages in the morning would you say you read? Or is it like a specific amount of time?
It's probably more an amount of time, like 30 to 45 minutes. I like with my eyes, it takes me a little longer to read things. But what I'll do is I've learned to kind of skim and maybe like just read and get the parts I want. So, for example, if I'm reading a book where I know every single chapter is going to include a long-winded story and then a lesson at the end in the last 3 pages, I'll usually just like read a little bit of the story. And if I'm not interested, I'll just skip to those last 3 pages. So even though I'm like, quote unquote, reading full books, sometimes I'm really only reading like 60 or 70% of a book and taking away kind of the key points.
That's good to know. And I've heard other people who I follow, like are kind of the social media mentors, like they've talked about that too. Like they'll kind of just like skim it and get the main points, which is good for me to know because I find that I try and read slow to get every concept, every word, and then I'm like, I got to reread that.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it takes me forever to read a book. That's probably why I don't read as much.
Well, and I also like, I personally like physical books because I underline quite a bit and I'll throw Post-it notes in there. And I use a lot of what I read as a springboard for myself to create content, whether it's on Instagram or YouTube or my newsletter or blog. So reading really is a way for me to create. And I almost feel like I read things and then like I digest it in a specific way and maybe combine it with something else and put it out for other people. And so I think a lot of times people say like, how are you so creative or thoughtful or whatever, or original? And at the end of the day, like I think all creativity is just taking a bunch of different things and synthesizing it in a new way based on your worldview and perspective. And
Yes.
so I really feel like I can't take credit for anything that I say or write because it's really all built on what other people have said and written before me.
Yeah, I totally agree because I'll see things, read things, and I'll just kind of make it my own, and then from my own experiences and my thoughts on it, and then put it out there. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Another question: what has been the best piece of advice you have ever received? I love asking people this question.
Man, I've received so much good advice, mostly from my parents, and I didn't listen to like 90% of it probably because like, when your parents give you advice, you don't want to listen. Right. Honestly, I think the best advice I ever got, I mentioned maybe in different wording earlier in the podcast, but you can't live your life by what ifs. You have to go by even if, right? So like instead of worrying about the future and what if this happens, what if that happens, you have this confidence and trust that even if this happens or even if whatever plays out, you'll figure it out. You'll be okay. It'll all work out. So I think, don't live your life on what ifs, live your life on even ifs. And then to go on top of that, advice I received from another friend of mine was very similar. And it was actually what if goes both ways. And meaning, you can think of what if it goes wrong, but you can also think what if it goes so good. And so worrying about the future is really something that I think most of the advice I've received has been about and centered around. So,
Yep, I love that. Do you think that's the same piece of advice you would give your younger self, or is there anything else you would tell yourself?
I would definitely give myself that advice. Honestly, any of the content I create, anything I write or talk about is advice I would give my younger self because, the process of creating is really, it's selfish on some level because it's for me, but it's also for others. I would say something we didn't talk about, but something I would tell my younger self would be just be you, be authentic, be genuine. Don't care so much about what other people think. People are really attracted to people who are fully authentic. And the people who care about you won't mind who you are. And the people that mind who you are probably don't matter a whole lot. So just be you is what I would
Yeah,
tell you. Yeah.
100%. I agree. We have talked about so much. It's like, this is amazing. If you could put together, like, sum it up into one thing, like one or two things you would want someone who is listening to take away with, what would that be?
Yeah, I feel like conciseness is a problem. Is something I'm trying to get better at, is being concise. But I would say struggle is a stimulus for strength, and adversity is the opportunity for growth. Right, and I mean those words 100%. And the other thing is just like, you're not alone. And again, if you're listening to this, there are people who care so much about you, even if they don't tell you all the time, even if you don't know it, even if you haven't met them yet, like myself. Don't be afraid to reach out and get some support. And I'm here for anybody who needs that. And I mean that.
So good. Yeah, I saw that on your website actually. I was like, wow, that's unique. I've never seen that before. But I was like, this is a guy who truly does care. Like, you put out, like, is that your personal phone number?
You know what? I originally put out my personal number, and then one of my friends told me I should make a Google Voice number. That way there's like a layer of anonymity there. And I'm so happy I did, because I will tell you, for every one person that actually reaches out and wants to connect or ask for help, I probably get like 8 or 9 like joke messages, So I'm happy that it's, I have a layer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So what would be, is there anything, like a question or something else that we haven't talked about, or something that you can think of that, like, I haven't asked, or maybe other people haven't asked, but would be a really good thing to ask you?
Wow, that is such a great question. That's like one of the best questions anybody's asked me. Um, people ask me a lot about my eyes. People ask me a lot about my struggle. I think we don't talk enough about money, to be honest, like just as a society, and like that open dialogue and conversation. And I think money is a really dangerous thing, for myself included. And so some of my biggest struggles and kind of like mental battles in life have been around finances, and just like, trading time for money. And kind of, I guess, my thoughts about that, because at the end of the day, one of the reasons I left my job was because I felt like I was simply just trading my time for money. And at the end of my life, all that my time is going to run out. That's the most valuable thing. There's only so much time. We can always make more money. And I think that people get so stuck where they are and so bound to money and finances and the security that brings, that they maybe never take that jump to fully pursue the things they want to pursue, and to even be the person they want to be. So I think the conversation around money would be something that people could ask more questions about.
That is genius. Yep. I see that too all the time. People are just like, I feel like they're just held back by their money and thinking, I don't have enough to do this, this, and this, whether it's an experience or if they want to start a business, but they're like, I don't have the security, I can't do that. And then I would say that's a big fear for me, is like to look back on life and realize, like, I didn't take these experiences, or I didn't take that jump, I didn't start that business because of money. Like, there's always ways to make money, and it's, yeah, and there's so different avenues to it. I feel like that's one aspect, but another aspect is like not really being taught how to invest, or just simple ways like that,
Yeah,
But
totally. I couldn't agree more with that. And I think it's a conversation as a society we need to have more. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think the security of money is what gets most people. But like one of my friends told me the other week, sometimes you have to back yourself into a wall and figure it out. And that's where you're creative, when you have those constraints and those boundaries. And so if you're, worried about money, or you're a little low on it, just trust in yourself that you'll figure it out. And yeah, I'm excited to have that conversation at some point in the future with somebody out there.
yeah, did that make it easier for you to say, like, bye to the job, and then just like, because you have that mindset?
It did and it didn't. In full transparency, I do a lot of online coaching, and I've gotten to the point where I have a little bit of that safety net. So I can, it's not like I'm going from full salary to nothing. But at the same time, yeah, that mindset totally, it was almost, for me, it was like this balance between, okay, what's more important to me, money right now, or the future regret that I might feel if I never make this change? And at some point, that future regret was just more important to me. And yeah, that's why I made the jump.
It's a great question for people to ask themselves. I love it. So one more question, actually,
Yeah.
two more things, but I'd love to know other people's perspective on Flow with the Grow. So my podcast is called Flow with the Grow. So when you hear that, what does Flow with the Grow mean to you?
Yeah, first of all, I absolutely love that. And second of all, I think it really goes along with a lot of what we talked about, at least for me. We can't control what life throws at us. And so we have to be able to flow with things as they come to us, but we also have to be able to grow with them and grow through them as they happen. So that's at least what it means to me. Yeah.
Love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so I was on your website and I saw you do a bunch of coaching stuff. So I would love for you to share about all of that and maybe what you're transitioning into, like what your business is like, how people can reach you, all of that stuff, your podcast, all that.
Definitely. Yeah. So I can start with the coaching. I do quite a bit of online coaching. And so I call it performance coaching. But what that really means is whether it's a strength goal, an endurance goal, a mindset, or a lifestyle goal, I'm here to help you perform at your best for those goals. I do a combination of those things, and I really try my best to make it as individualized as I possibly can. So when people come to me, we start from scratch. I do my best to understand where you're coming from, so your past, where you are right now, so your present, and where you want to go, your future. And I try to do my best to use my resources and tools and life experience to help you get to where you want to go. And so that's what I do with the online coaching. I'd be happy to talk to anybody who's interested. The best way to find me for anything is probably through Instagram. I respond to every single message, and I'm happy to connect with anyone. So put out a lot of content on Instagram. I write a blog, as you've mentioned a few times, and that is totally free. I actually pay to have the site, and I just love writing and creating with the hopes that my words will reach somebody and impact them in a positive way. So I write a lot about the topics we've talked about. Some other things, my wife and I just got married and went on our honeymoon recently. So I wrote about that. It's all over the place, but it's fun. And I do a weekly newsletter that's $3 a month if anybody's interested. And every week I send out 3 quotes, a thought from me, a thought from somebody else, a book recommendation, and a few videos or podcasts that I'd recommend. So that comes out on a weekly basis. And that's a nice way for us to be able to interact as well, because I do some monthly question and answer sessions. And I recently started a YouTube channel and I do a podcast called the Pursuit Podcast. But I know that was a whole lot of stuff. Best way to find me is on Instagram at joerinaldi.dpt. And that's it.
Cool. I will link all of that in the show notes too, so people can find you. Yeah. Well, wow. This was one of my favorite conversations I think I've ever had ever. This was so good. I'm going to go back and listen to it. And you are going to do so much good. You're going to do big things. I can feel it. I can sense it just by talking to you. And I can't wait to watch you grow through that too. So I'm excited for you.
Oh, thank you so much, Sophia. That really means the world to me. And it was such an honor being on the podcast. I really enjoyed the conversation too. And I'm looking forward to staying in touch.
Awesome. Yes, we for sure should. So thank you again. And I hope you have a good rest of your weekend and week. And hopefully sometime we'll chat soon.
Sounds good. Yeah. All the same to you.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.
I don't know what to say other than wow. I am just blown away. I don't know about you, but I am like on a high of inspiration and wisdom and excitement. And this conversation was one of my favorites. It was so unique, and Joe just was so fun to talk to, so open and honest. And I really hope that you took away a lot, if not a few, words of inspiration, different perspective, a different outlook on life and on struggle and on growth and adversity. And you can walk away also being a little bit more inspired and walk away with a different perspective in your struggles when a struggle comes. I know for me, there were a few analogies and things that he said that I just never heard before, and it was a light bulb aha moment for me. And I hope that you had many of those as well. In the show notes will be his website to all of his coaching programs he talked about, as well as his Instagram, so you can connect with him. And he genuinely means to connect to him and reach out to him if you want. And I would definitely encourage you to go back and listen to this if you listen to it just once, because I know for me, when I listen to things a couple times, 2, 3, 4 times, every single time I will take away 1 or 2 things that I didn't really hear before. And so it's kind of like listening to a whole new conversation. If you really enjoyed what you heard, if you related, if you resonated with anything that Joe shared, definitely reach out to him and let him know what your favorite part was, maybe what you took away, if there was something that was an aha moment to you, or it had an impact on you in any way. Reach out to him on Instagram, like he mentioned, and let me know as well. I would love to know what you took away from this episode. And if you feel called, please leave a review on the show and maybe even about this specific episode, sharing what you learned and what you took away. And one last thing, if you found this episode to be helpful in any way impactful, you resonated with anything, take a screenshot and share it to your social media and tag Joe and myself. Spread his story, his strength and struggle, his words of inspiration, his outlook, this perspective, because I truly believe everyone needs to hear what he talked about. Thanks again for listening. I hope you have a great rest of your day, night, week, weekend. Bye for now. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Flow with the Grow. I'll see you next week for your daily dose of positivity and growth.